Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to another installment of Show to V with Mike G, the show of life, the show of Puebla, Austin, Texas, fatherhood, and so much more. You know, I kind of want to apologize. I wasn't able to get an episode out here within the past few weeks. The flu? Was it the bird flu? I don't know, but something's going around Austin, and then it was my birthday just yesterday. And speaking of birthdays, speaking of Aquarii, today we're chatting with Lost Explorers Luis Del Pozo, who is also an Aquarius and is going to have a birthday, I believe, next week or a week and a half. So this made me think about our conversation, which we recorded some months ago. This was when Luis was not necessarily new to Austin, but really making his mark in the scene for mezcal here in Austin. And just a few months ago, Lost Explorer released a tequila, which is quite delicious as well. So you will see Luis out and about all the time, and he's about balance, he's about quality, and he's always dressing quite nice. So without further ado, I hope you enjoy this great conversation with Luis Del Pozo of Lost Explorer Mezcal and Tequila.
I would say so. Yeah. I mean, also like I haven't been in very many communities, as you could say, like bourbon or like gin or rum.
If there's a gin community, I want to join it. Yeah, exactly, I really don't think, I think it's everybody just in their house in a closet somewhere drinking gin, right?
Yeah. So I would say yes. Automatically. Like, I mean, that's kind of how I've been able to identify with Glenn and Dursey. Just easy communication between both of us, and not so much about mezcal. Obviously, that's what connected us. But
right.
It's just what we go through from day to day that kind of just allows us to communicate to one another.
And I'm not. I promise I'll stop mentioning this, but the four of us, you, Dursey, Glenn, and myself, we're all Aquarius. Is that messed up?
That is pretty messed up. Honestly, like I don't know anything about astrology or any of those. I always, not gonna lie, I like to see what different meanings have, just to be like, oh, I can definitely see that, but I don't fully believe it, but I can definitely can pick up on certain aspects of it.
Okay, so here's a couple common elements, and let's see if you can.
I would say the flow for sure is always. That's me. I always like to go with what happens and what's happening and adapt to it.
Do you have any temper at all?
It takes a lot.
Exactly. Right.
It takes a lot.
Are you exceedingly diplomatic?
I wouldn't say so, but I am. I would say fair. Be fair.
Yeah.
I'm not a people pleaser, but I like to please as many people as I can to make the right decision.
Sure.
But at the same time, if that decision's based on my performance and how I would want someone to represent that kind of action. So like, for example, if I was like bar manager, right? You know, I wouldn't ask you to do something that I wouldn't do normally. Yeah. And if I'm going to do it, I'm going to show you that I can do it really well. And, you know, that's kind of like the standard of what it is.
I'm with you. I mean, as talking about having been in music for a long time, if you haven't carried an 8x10 Ampeg bass cab up a stairs, you haven't bar backed. It's like it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Or help your drummer take a kick drum up a flight of stairs or something. Yeah. You don't need to help them. You really don't, but it helps to go through those motions and understand those tasks. Okay, when it comes to you, the deep you, and then the work you, is there a clear line of delineation? For instance, when you go home, you talk about balance, which is go to you and your wife. Does work ever spill over into your home life?
Right now it has, but it's one of those where it hasn't really caused any problems yet, or I don't know if it will. I try to still minimize it. Like nowadays, I'm getting used to working from home, and that's something that I'm I was not used to at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And so that's something that finding those balances in between, and being able to take some emails, and I may be done with work, but then like, oh, something has to come up and I have to reply real quick. Stuff like that are very minimal, but I wouldn't account that to be
Yeah, it doesn't
effective.
sound like kind of like overreaching into the
correct.
personal life.
So as far as that, like I try to do that as far as balancing between both.
Yeah.
But again, I go with the flow.
Yeah, exactly. Don't get in your own way. Don't kind of say no to things. Another thing I kind of noticed is it seems like you got a keen eye for branding, right? Not only that the bow tie Louis, which was obviously an intentional move. And actually there's an article with you some years ago saying like this was a thing that you intentionally did to shift over. Just your opinion of your own eye and your aesthetic.
Yeah.
Do you kind of understand your personal brand now and what it is and what it does and what it doesn't do?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that I've kind of just taken a step back nowadays, but it's something that has opened a lot of opportunities and I still welcome them. Now I just kind of say yes or no, like stuff like this. But at the time when I made those decisions based on what the branding was and the bow tie, it was just simply to bring people into what perception seemed as just another lobby bar. So for me, it was being able to showcase the bar itself and showcasing the experience and great cocktails that can come from a lobby bar and bringing in the community in that sense. And that kind of all changed once I started doing competitions and being able to do competitions with really well-established bars around the Orange County community was kind of cool because it allowed me to see where I was in that caliber and allowed me to see that I could actually do a really good job, because I didn't have a grasp of where I was.
Yeah, right.
At the end of the day, I know I enjoyed it and I liked what I was doing, and whatever happened, and kind of just took it from there.
Whether I'll admit, this may be one of the first times I actually admit this. I'm very careful as to how I look on camera, how I sound on microphone, and all these aesthetic principles, right?
Absolutely.
May seem like I don't care, but I really do care. I don't think I care about what others think, but I think I care about, for me, what my standard is of me putting myself out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So with you in that day, you've posted great pictures of cocktails, good cocktail making videos, whether it's TikTok or Instagram. And then we'll get into the classes that you did during COVID as well. But is that important to you that you come across a certain way? That there is an image of you or a brand of you that has a standard to it? I know that might be obvious, but a lot of people don't think of it like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like every day I take it in as like every day I'm on stage, no matter where I'm at. And so, yes, I try to carry myself the best I can, no matter what I'm doing. And yeah, I think that's kind of my perspective of how I see myself. And I took that from my friend Ravin Bazell, who right now is in Florida, but he's always told me that we're always on stage. And that kind of just clicked automatically.
The Shakespeare thing, right?
Yeah,
Life's a stage.
Yeah.
Well, knowing that, I'm sure you're not entirely, you don't necessarily let what other people think of you dictate that. What are a few things that you always want to come across, whether you're on the mic or whether you're on camera?
I think for me, it's just leaving some sort of positive legacy with whatever I'm associated with. So, for example, now working on the supplier side, I know that the Lost Explorer, whatever comes after me working with them, or I want to be with them as long as possible, but at the end of the day, I know there's going to be a end, but I know that whatever I do in that time frame is going to affect however they do, and so I want to do my best I can to help them get to that point. And
good content in a way, right?
Exactly. And so and that's always been the case with everything from the bartending side to cocktails. I don't like to half do anything,
right.
That's kind of how I see it. My grandpa always said, if you're gonna be a sweeper, be the best sweeper ever.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the perspective I have in everything I do.
I love that.
So that's
so let's go back then to Mission Viejo, kind of where you grew up in California. More a sports kid or more an academic kid?
Honestly, I think I was an academic kid, but then I also got into sports. And
Soccer,
so,
right?
Yeah. Soccer kind of just took over. And honestly, I became lazy in that realm. And in the academic side, I could admit that. And, but at the same time, it was not because I wasn't trying. It's like I think I just didn't like how I was learning, and I
the method in which.
Now I know how I pick up on things and learn.
Yeah.
I'm more of a doer. I like a combination of someone talking to me and learning, but most of the time when I was in school, it was mostly presentations, taking notes, and then going from there and taking a test.
Yeah.
And so that was very difficult for me because I like doing things in that capacity, and so it was very hard.
There seems like to your grandpa's quote, which I do agree. Best is a hard one, right? Because people are like, "What's the best mezcal?" I was like, "I don't know what the fucking best mezcal is. Come on, what's the best one for you?" Right?
Yeah.
But there is an underlying implication that you may be slightly competitive. Is that fair to say? Whether it was soccer or even sales?
Yeah, I mean, if anything, I don't. If I'm gonna compete, I'm gonna compete to win, but it's not gonna. It's not going to dictate how I act.
Yeah.
As far as like if I win or lose, right? I'm not going to be a sore loser. I come from the perspective of like, if you earn the trophy, you earn the trophy. If I don't win, I don't want a trophy, right?
Yeah, that's good. I like
that. I just know that I give it my best. And so that's kind of the perspective I had when I was doing those competitions. I knew that I wasn't going to win, but I knew that I was going to do my best to compete against people that had been doing it for 8+10 years,
Is it ever a competition against yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I think my best work, or anytime I've gotten compliments, it's always been from people that are in the industry, and for me, I appreciate that. Like at least gives me a guidance of, okay, you're doing something right, or just.
I love that. Yeah, someone keep going, right?
Yeah,
it's weird. Can I share some with you? I don't know if you feel this way, but I've been writing a lot lately, and one of the things that keeps kind of coming up is, for instance, last night I was there's a great Metal Monday takeover at the Treasury, right? Which, I love intoning on Matty K and stuff, metalheads and all that. But someone came up to me and they said, when I leave town, or if I leave town, you're one of the few people that I really want to know that I leave. I want to meet with you before I go. And I was like, oh, that's, of course, that's cool. But he said, I really appreciate what you do. And I was like, I don't know exactly what it is I do, but people are expressing some kind of gratitude. And I think the longer that you're around in this industry, that starts to happen. And so are you starting to see people that said, I really appreciated that you did this. I really, really liked the way that you presented this. Are you seeing more of that gratitude pour your way as you get older?
Yes. Not as much, but I mean,
you're still young.
nuances of it, if anything. But I mean, just simple like, hey, what are you up to? Let's go get work done, or let's meet up. That's something that that's for me growing, because at the end of the day, I'm still new to the market and still new to Austin. But I mean, I wouldn't say that I get a lot of it, but every now and then. I
suspect the longer you do this, the more that will happen.
Yeah,
because in a way, it's being committed to the thing. If you're going to be a mezcal, which this is not the only mezcal brand you work with, Lost Explorer, but if you keep doing it, eventually you start kind of resonating. It takes, for everything we think is a loud shot in the air that's really obvious to everybody else, it takes them 5 years to realize I was ever fired. It's an interesting kind of thing that way. So, all right, going back to high school, was there any I always ask this question, and sometimes I think it's meaningful, because my mom was a nurse and my stepdad, but dad, he was in the hospitality industry. And broken family in many ways, right? What did your folks do?
My folks were always into running or helping run gas stations.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurial?
No, like just managing
Got
them.
it. Okay.
So for me, hard work has always been one of the things that kind of has been a principle.
Yeah, sure.
And that goes with, anything that you do, you should do your best.
Yeah.
And so school for me was always also one of those things that I was doing, not just for myself, but for my family.
That's what I was going to ask. Yeah.
And so for me, once I decided to not fully commit to school, that was the hardest thing too, because it was one of those things where I told my mom, like, hey mom, I'm just not going to be finishing school. I'm like a semester away from transferring over, but I just don't see it I
What'd
don't
she
see.
say?
She was obviously disappointed and sad,
Yeah.
but a year had happened, and she saw that I was doing the AC stuff, the hospitality side, and she saw that I had a vision of what I wanted to do,
Yeah.
rather than just cold turkey and being a bum kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so once she saw that I was actually doing something that I loved and enjoyed, she kind of just felt relieved and just kind of gave me the,
Yeah. Did she go to Did she go to college?
She did not.
So you might have been the first.
I would have been the first.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I can understand the dilemma there.
Yeah, I mean, like my parents have always been like, we're doing this to give you a better life kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so that's why it was a hard thing, because here me going to school has been not just for me but for family.
That's
sakes.
right. Well, it's symbolic too. Right?
Yeah. But at the same time, I'm happy I was able to realize what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And luckily I did it. My degree was going to be in advertising.
Okay.
And in hindsight, I kind of still do that without having the degree,
Right, or being part of an agency.
Yeah, exactly.
Your own agency.
And I am just super thankful that I was able to do the summer internships, where I was able to learn and grow within that, but at the same time see that wasn't for me.
Yeah.
And fully commit to the hospitality side.
How many, and this is the thing, is like sometimes when I ask this question, people, if you're in different parts of Texas, it's racially influenced, right? But for me, I love Mexico. I love the people in Mexico. I've been kind of all around. And are your folks first generation, second generation, or had they lived in California their whole life?
Yeah, they're first generation.
Okay.
So actually, I want to say at least half of their life.
Oh wow.
Because I'm 30. Yeah, my parents were.
Are you 33?
Their early 30s.
When they came?
When we came to Cali.
Oh, that's amazing. Where from?
Puebla.
Puebla?
Yes.
Okay.
And so,
yeah. Oh, this is right. Okay,
I'm 33. Yeah.
Because there's a manufacturing plant and stuff that we talked about at La Holly.
Yeah. Some of my family members from Puebla work for Volkswagen. It's one of the biggest factories in Mexico. And so, but yeah, my parents back in Mexico, they did carpet business. And so really? I think it's still out there, but like it was run by my dad's side of the family, and so my dad ran one part of it.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting to.
We were talking about this is something I will always admit that I'll never have the ability to understand. I know what it feels like to be a new kid, right? That's a different kind of flavor, right? Mm-hmm. And you get picked on for different kinds of ways. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people I've talked to, they were either born in Mexico and kind of came into the States. Is it hard to both assimilate into what you were telling me is kind of like a real white high school or school in itself? Is it hard to embrace your heritage? Is one ready to do that even as a teenager, or does it take much later to embrace your Mexican heritage?
Honestly, I think that's a case-by-case situation. Yeah. But based on my experience, it's a lot of being able to take in your culture and embrace it. Like, for example, and at home, Spanish is always the case. And embracing, what's happening within your family, because every family has their own traditions of what they do.
Right.
But at the same time, when in school, that's kind of how I learned English. School English, home Spanish, and that's how I was able to be bilingual.
Yeah.
But at the same time, once you get older and start understanding what's going on in social experiences and whatnot, there does come a period when you feel like you're neither. You're in the middle. Like
really,
like at one point for me, like, am I really Mexican enough to be called Mexican?
Oh wow.
In that kind of aspect. And so, just because you're not surrounded by other fellow heritage other than your family, which is fair, but at the same time, you just feel like there's a disconnect in between.
Kind of like on an island a little bit.
Yeah, like, I mean, it's like one of those things, you got to be there in order to experience it, kind of thing, and you don't really get to experience it unless you are surrounded by it, right?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how I felt, even though I was very connected to my family.
Right. It's a dichotomous, right?
Yeah.
And it's a very unique
Hopefully
experience.
That makes sense.
It does make a lot of sense, actually, and of the conversations I've had about that. It's not a phenomenon. I think it's a natural kind of dichotomy or inner kind of turmoil almost that it might cause. But I imagine it's kind of difficult at times.
Well, I mean, because like at the end of the day, like my Spanish is not the best Spanish, but I can communicate, right?
Yeah.
And so when I'm talking to my relatives in Spanish, you know, their Spanish is still very different than mine,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so, and that can be the same with my English, you know, vice versa. But that's also another topic.
No, which is a lovely one that I find myself kind of in the middle of that, because I can understand Spanish, I can speak some Spanish, but it's something it's like for me, I'm an outsider, right?
Yeah.
I was like that it.
You're not an outsider. It's like
I think internally I feel that
right.
way.
There's an endearment with people that just want to try, even if it's not the best. Like we appreciate that even the most, and I feel that could be the same with any language. But I can definitely respect that in.
Well, I appreciate that, but it's still just an inner thing, right? Yeah. Like I just feel, and then we do this to ourselves. We impose a dynamic, right? And so that's kind of how for me, I'm like, it's funny. I was talking to my friend the other day. I said, I just want to make sure that I understand everything that someone's telling me because I owe it to them to understand. And she's like, we just appreciate that you try. And I'm like, that doesn't feel like enough to me.
We like to self-deprivate ourselves.
Well, I've got a history of that as a lyricist, an emo lyricist in the 2000s.
Yeah,
this happens a lot. Do you remember the moment where you knew that hospitality had to be the shift, that was your calling?
Yeah, absolutely. It was when I was beginning to do my AC hotel.
Yeah,
because at that time,
right?
Yeah, so at that time I was doing my summer internships with the ad agency. It was called Casanova Pedro. They're amazing. They're doing great things. And I was working at Lucille's, which is a barbecue spot in Orange County, but they had multiple different locations. I had originally started at the Lake Forest one, and I had just opened a new one in Santa Ana. And so at that time I was transitioning from a server to bartender, and when you're learning how to bartend, you're feeling curious and whatnot. You just want to learn everything. But at that point in time, I was just learning how to do specs, some volume stuff.
Right.
So when I got into the AC hotel, who was Ravin was a third person trainer, you could say, for Ellis.
The one
Adams.
that's in Florida now.
Correct. For Ellis Adams, but at the same time he was working for Y&K in Irvine.
Okay.
He was my trainer at that point, and he just was he is a wealth of knowledge, and for the way he taught me, or the way he taught, it was just a 3-person team.
Yeah.
It was a very small team, so I got a lot of time to spend with him. He just basically explained reasons why you do things and how you do things, rather than just to do them. And so that to me was really an enlightenment kind of moment where I just felt empowered to want to learn more and just become better and better and better. And so for me at that point, that's when I decided, you know what, I'm going to commit into bartending and bartending properly.
Did you feel even at that point, as you kind of realize it's something that the why of it's actually really important for me too?
Yeah.
Instead of just do this, I'm like, yeah, but why am I doing this, right?
Right.
I'm not gonna say no to doing it, but just tell me, why.
Yeah, totally. I think my creative side aspect was being matched there, where I was able to be creative. At the same time, I had sense of ownership in what I was doing there as well.
Yeah, right.
And then at the same time, just being able to learn. I love learning. I may not have learned in the academic side, but I love learning every day.
Yeah, it's just as important.
And so for me, that was very important in that sense. So, Ravin covered all that aspect within, a week and a half of time that I had with him. And we just became friends from then.
I bet.
And from then on, I never turned back.
But before you entered the hospitality industry, because you do, to me, at least aesthetically, seem like quite a creative person, even though you don't play instruments, which isn't the only way, right? Yeah. But
absolutely.
What were your outlets for creativity before you kind of got into the hospitality industry?
I originally, when I was a kid, I would always play with those Power Ranger toys and break them apart and then put them back together, and then Legos and stuff like that.
Yeah,
so in my mind, I always thought I was creative in the sense where I liked how to build things, and so I thought I was going to be some sort of architect or engineer.
Oh yeah.
But once I got into high school, I did a drafting course because that's part of the step into getting into wherever you want to go.
Yeah.
I just didn't like it. I just didn't like
really?
that aspect.
What was it? Was it too formal? Was it too?
I think it was the measuring
restricted?
and I like structure, but not too much structure, and
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense, but
so real quick, as a side, do you like to cook at all?
now I do. Yes.
Now you do, but do you like to bake?
I have more patience for cooking than
Exactly. It's the same thing, I think, as the drafting. I love to cook. I hate to bake.
Yeah.
I do not want to have to do things in a particular way.
And so from that point, I was like, I was lucky enough to join a graphic design course that was offered, and that's kind of how I decided into getting into graphic design / the advertising, and then I transitioned to the hospitality side.
Did you enjoy Mad Men?
I never actually watched it, honestly.
And I know that's desire to watch it.
Yes and no. I mean, maybe it's one of those that it's just so many seasons that
that's true.
I need to catch up. But I hear great things about it. Back in the days, it's how advertising was done. It's very cutthroat too.
Yeah, and it's a different, tense kind of environment. There are some nuggets I think you would appreciate, even if you don't have to watch the entire show. So, do you think that the interest in graphic design and this newfound ability to not only connect with people because you're behind the bar, right?
Yeah,
but was it a conscious choice to then start saying, I'm going to be in front of the camera, or whether it's motion or just stills, or I'm going to be taking pictures of these cocktails in a particular way? Like, was there a moment where you thought, this is kind of what I want myself to be seen as?
Yeah, it was a combination of, I appreciate, for example, fonts and margins and color theory and how things are laid out and balance between how things are relative to each other, where, those are things that you don't really talk about when, you're creating something. They just come out, and, what you see is what you see. So in the hospitality side, it's like the perfect method of preparation to, the logistics of how you want to create your cocktails to how can you convey that same information to your team. All those things are thought out, but, you have to start out one place. So in that correlation, that's kind of how I was able to bridge the gap and make it sense for me.
I love that, because it really is about that. There's an intuition. It's funny because you craft a pic. Let's just call it a photo, right, of a cocktail. You craft it in a certain way, and then if I was to say, well, why did you craft it in that way? Why did you shoot it in that lighting or whatever? You'd be able to tell me. Right. A lot of people don't realize that the instincts that they feel creatively actually come from grounded technique.
Yeah,
whether
absolutely.
It's symmetry, or whether it's like a high bokeh, or all of these things.
Yeah, 1000%. I love shooting cocktail content, but it's harder for me to do people content. But that's something that I want to get better at.
Yeah.
But at the same time, with cocktail content, it's one of those things where, like, you still have your own aesthetic. But for me, for example, if I'm going to shoot a content, I like to show lines and natural light and be able to, give a different perspective. Yeah. Obviously, we all do, but I mean, that's kind of like my aesthetic.
Well, you've been consistent. That's something. Do you think that consistency, even through the tasting classes that you did through in COVID, did that open up doors for you, opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it was just basically putting yourself out there, and that was actually that's my answer to what the question was about, the creative side and just how you want to be put out there and what your thoughts were. Honestly, for me, it was just simply putting yourself out there, even though it may be awkward, but you just get better at it once you do more repetitions.
Totally.
And for me, that's just been crucial, and just learning from those. Like my first class online might have not been the best class. I am myself credit. I like to give myself good and bad feedback and just build off from that internally. Yeah. And so, it just can be simple as, your structure, how you present things.
The narrative, right?
The narrative. You may have great ideas, but if you don't have structure, there's no way to convey them to people that are not into it.
I love that, because it's really about the messaging in a sense too. Right. There's narrative and all of that. When it comes to aesthetic, whether it's colors or whether it's music, is there a particular medium that you find particularly inspiring for you? Places that you may go, not literal, but maybe mental places you go to get ideas, to think about new ways to create?
Yeah, honestly, bars I respect, restaurants, people, or just like you were talking about, music or colors. I like bouncing colors too. But as far as like how I think of cocktails, my my style of making cocktails is trying to make something seem hard, but well, actually simple, but it's still very difficult to execute. I love simple flavors, but at the same time can be complicated.
Yeah.
And that's based on, the preparation that you do.
Of course.
So I guess you could say for me, that's why my cocktails or my pictures kind of seem in that way, because that's kind of the aesthetic that I want to present. It's clean, elegant, but still complicated.
Yeah, it's super clean. All the pictures are really clean. Is there, because I love flavor.
Yeah.
Whether I like the flavor or not, that's not really the point. I just love flavors,
Yeah.
Is there a particular, well, okay, because we talk about it, frame it in the sake of mezcal, because a lot of people don't like mezcal because they say it's smoky.
Right.
I'm able to look past that. You're able to look past that. But is there a particular flavor that isn't your favorite to work with in cocktails? Not brand, but just the flavor.
Heavily anise flavors.
Really?
But I like them.
Yeah.
But it's just I that was probably my one flavor that I can work with, but it's like the one that kind of stay away as well.
Interesting.
Like black licorice style.
Yeah. Absinthe a bit too much then, or going too heavy on it.
I always just do very minimal, or even a spray. Like I don't shy away from it, but like, it's not my go-to.
Yeah.
That's I think
that's a very common answer. That and peat. Peat is another one that.
Honestly, I'm not afraid of peat.
Yeah.
But I am very conscious about like black licorice flavors.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What about cilantro?
I like cilantro, but I feel like there's too many cilantro cocktails that I've seen that are always refreshing. That I kind of just don't even think about it.
Yeah.
But I do like cilantro.
Because that's another one genetically people, that propensity to dislike.
Not afraid of that one. No,
I like that one. That's a tough one when I meet a lot of like Mexican friends. Like, I hate cilantro. I'm like, oh my god, that's gotta be really difficult. It's like it's just everywhere.
Yeah. No, I'm not afraid of
navigate that.
No.
Yeah. So Austin seems like a random place for you to end up.
Yeah.
After being in OC, right? OC, not Bay, right? No,
OC. Yeah.
That I think was because of one of the roles you had with the craft cocktail program, whatnot, with the AC hotels. Is that what kind of brought you to Austin?
No, honestly, COVID did.
Oh.
When I was at my last place was Mayfield. And Mayfield, I really didn't have a time frame of what was going to happen. It kind of just happened.
Okay.
My wife and I and my father-in-law, we had kind of like a joke. We had a conversation about places we probably would move.
Okay.
And I said, fuck it, let's just move to Austin.
Yeah.
And my wife took it literally and she started looking for places.
Oh,
in
no
Austin.
kidding.
But that's also because a year prior to when COVID hit, we had visited Austin to visit her grandparents who live in Georgetown.
Oh, okay.
And we had a great time. My first bar that I visited was Here Nor There.
Okay.
And then I was able to visit Small Victories and Half Step before all the stuff that was happening. And during that time period, it was I believe it was UT versus Baylor.
Oh, that's a big
And I got to experience what the environment was like with everything going on, even though that's not really Austin, but I kind of got to experience that from the outside perspective. And that kind of just stuck with me. And so fast forward to that 1 year when we're going through COVID and we're like having this conversation, it's like, let's just move to Austin. She literally took it literally. And she started looking at places. And our first thought, we weren't having any kids yet, but our first thought was like a district or counties that had great school system.
Yeah, that's why you're up in Round Rock, huh?
Oh, and honestly, Round Rock wasn't even a conversation. It just
really?
happened. We were originally planning on moving to Liberty Hill.
Sure.
And the house that we were looking at, which just wasn't what the vibe was. When obviously you see it through screen and computer. And she had, I believe, came for like 3 or 4 days to visit that house and just check out the area. And she just didn't like it. And then, so that same day, she only had 1 day left of,
looking around.
Yeah. Our house we live in right now was short sale.
Oh.
She looked at it. It was a little bit above our asking, but it was just like, we got to go check it out.
Yeah.
She loved it. She was with her dad and her grandparents, so they loved it. Everything was good. And I was working at my shift in Mayfield, and she was like, showed me the house. I'm like, oh, cool, I love it. She had already put an offer before you even ask me. So it was just one of those trust things. Like, okay, great, I already put an offer, and then a couple hours later, it's like, yeah, and then like a couple hours later, it's like, we got it. I'm like, oh shit, it's happening.
Yeah.
And I was happy but sad at the same time because honestly,
whole life had been out there, right?
Yeah, and we have all our family members there, and I really had a great thing going on with Mayfield, where perfect amount of creativity with great bar team, great owner, great everything. I loved everything about it, and just being, hey, by the way, I'm moving in this time period.
Oh man.
But what happened was we were able to do a lease back, so we signed the contract in November and we moved March, and allowed us time to get jobs and kind of finalize what we needed to do. And so originally, my first job was at the Proper. And that's
you at the Proper?
I was at the Proper at La Piscina.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I bartended there and had a great time and kind of transitioned from there. I wanted to experience the Austin scene, even though that's not really the scene, but I wanted to be in a metropolitan area because I've never been a city guy.
Nicky wasn't over there, was he?
He was, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He was working at Goldie's.
Yeah.
I got to work with him for a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, we go, I guess we go way back. I don't know. We're not like friends really, but
yeah. But I mean, like, he's an Austinite, so like, he's one of those dudes. So, but yeah, that's kind of how it happened.
That's pretty good. I like kind of how random it was, and I like that your wife only asked because she already did it.
Yeah. It's that built-in trust we have, right?
Yeah, no, trust.
She knows what I like. I know what she likes. So I mean, it was just one of those perfect.
I love that. Well, before we talk about EDM fests, because we're gonna have to talk about that. But how did you? Because I know there were some other brands you were involved with. Certainly, one which was a mezcal brand. But when I met you, it's funny because your name had already come up, and I've been in Austin a while, but in Agave, it's a much smaller community. But yeah, there's like Luis, this guy from Lost Explorer. I'm like, I haven't met him yet, but like, you were just like popping up everywhere apparently. And then since I've seen you like 5 or 6 times.
Yeah. Since
we met. But how did you get introduced to the brand?
A combination of other things that had happened. Like honestly, Gracias Madre was the perfect foundation for me because that's kind of where I got my appreciation for just the category or agave in general. Mm-hmm. And Max was just really pivotal in that knowledge that I was able to grow from there. Mm-hmm. But then Mestiza Negra was the other brand that I worked with, and it was more of like a hobby. I love working with Alex, but we actually go way back to high school. We went to high school together.
Oh wow, okay.
And we kind of just happened to stumble around because he's an exporter of fruits and other stuff and avocados.
Oh, cool.
And he goes to Oaxaca a lot. And so through his travels, he met this palenque and it was actually a mezcalera that he really enjoyed. And he's like, you make great mezcal. I want to make a mezcal with you. And so they partner up.
Oh.
And so he could only distribute to California because that's where his licensing was. And so in order to get it out there, he wanted to start off with people he knew. Mm-hmm. And we hadn't actually conversated in years. Like I graduated in 2008, and this was actually like in 2016, 17.
Gotcha.
So it had already been a while. And so he's like, hey, working with mezcal, would you be down to help me out, at least get my brand around 2 different bars? And that's kind of what I did.
Oh, wow.
And so I never really got to do what I was doing now, like right now, physically, full time. But it was more of like, hey, this is he, this is who, this is really a good place, and kind of just connected them to the right people. And that's kind of how we started, and that's kind of how I worked with them in that capacity. And through my time at Gracias Madre and Mayfield, Travis, who is my boss now, he worked for Kettle One for, I want to say, 10 years.
Oh, wow. Okay. I didn't realize. Okay.
And he had transitioned from Kettle One to Lost Explorer. So for me, that caught my eye because like working for a big company like that and then going into a startup was just intriguing enough. And knowing Travis, he's very insightful and he does things for a reason.
Right.
And
so there bound to have been a good reason that he moved to that.
Yeah, and his reason was he had just become another number at Kettle One that he didn't see any fulfillment. And he saw more of a purpose with the Lost and seeing what he can do and bring the experience that he had come from Kettle to the Lost Explorer kind of was what he was going for.
Yeah.
And he knew that I had moved to Austin, and he asked me if I knew anyone or if I was willing enough to put my hat in my name in the hat for the position that was being offered for.
Was it like
for
a regional
Texas.
position or just Texas position? Not that that's not enough.
Right. It was covering Texas.
Yeah.
And for me at the same time, it's like, well, I'm finding out I have a baby. I know I need time frame, and I love mezcal. I don't know anything about the Lost Explorer, but why not? And 3 interviews later, here I am.
It's funny because when we were talking at La Holly, like I get production, right? And so we talked about production, and I was like, yeah, cool. And this is what you have to do, right?
Right.
But I think the thing that was even more important to me, besides like you, which I got a vibe from you, but the juice was good, The Salmiana, and I love Salmiana from San Luis Potosí, and then there's some in the Nueva Leon sometimes and stuff. And like, I love that, but it's always felt punk rock and like garagey to me, which I love that element. But the most refined and elegant version of Salmiana I've ever had is the Lost Explorer.
Yeah.
And how many marks do you guys have now? I know you were drinking the Hobbley, which you said didn't make it into Texas, but
so if you want to count that 4,
Mhm.
but we're working on some other ones like an Arunqueño or
cool.
Maricuish, depending on what Fortino decides on.
yeah,
But we got some cool stuff coming up. It's just a matter of him
yeah.
finalizing it and being happy with it.
I know you haven't been doing this like in a long, long, long time. You've been in the industry a long time.
I literally been doing this for now a year.
Okay.
October was a year. So I'm a baby compared to some of these heavy hitters.
Yeah, I was just curious because it's changed so much, and I've been in the mezcal industry for over a decade now, and it's been cool to see it grow into what it's grown, and also not cool in a lot of ways.
Yeah, absolutely.
You have a more open ear now when you go to accounts? Are they or are they getting more jaded because everybody's got a mezcal brand now?
I don't know, man. I think that's a hard one because I take it by the case to case, but yeah, that's a little bit of it. But also it's like one of those things where it's a perfect balance of putting yourself out there and calling most of the time, but also try to be persistent enough to not be pushy, but at the same time show your presence kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's kind of been my perspective on this side, because seeing it from the backside, from the operator side, that's what I appreciated the most from the reps that I worked with the most. And so it's kind of a mirror image of what I liked seeing from the people that I worked with.
Right. Have you felt relatively embraced by the community here?
I would say so, yes. Also, a lot of that has to do with the brand itself. We're curated to work with whoever wants to carry us and wants to work with us. And for the most part, whoever we work with and who we work with right now, I have great relationships with. I would say so, and I'd be surprised if we didn't. But for the most part, I try to represent everyone that I work with as best as I can.
So because we can go into production, and actually I would just love to have a tasting with you, have people over, and you can do the
Absolutely
thing. But tell me what you find, even as a baby, and you said that, not me, in the agave community.
I mean, I'm a baby when it comes down to the supplier role, but
okay, but you've been around, like, gracias madre. So you've been
but I'm more of like an observer.
Yeah.
I like observing and seeing how things work.
Yeah.
That's how I am able to learn, and that's kind of how, when I go into accounts, that's kind of what I do first.
I do too. Like, I always want to know the lay of the land. I'll just sit there. I won't say anything. I will just breathe it all in.
Yeah.
Like, what's this person? What's their story? And not even ask. Just like kind of idea. But again, with the what I consider really, really clean cuts in the Salmiana, just because there's other great ones. This Habit we're drinking is lovely. But what's the one thing to you that you find resonates the most with Lost Explorer? Whether it's production or whether it's story or whether it's the maestra.
I'm all about balance. Yeah. And so it's the combination of the story with the production side of it. So for example, when we're talking about roasting, it's a 2-step process where it's roasted underground and it's finished off in a brick oven. That's something that's
I've never heard of that.
Yeah, it's very different. You don't hear that. And a lot of that has to do with probably just obviously people work in a different capacity, but also because like we're so used to seeing roasting underground and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that we don't like to think of outside of the box kind of thing. And so what I appreciate about Fortino and Statali and the team itself is that they are romantics and they want to showcase something that is elegant, as what you mentioned with the Salmiana, but at the same time, they don't like to cut any quality or any aspect of that and just showcase tradition, even though traditions are changing.
Oh,
right?
I love that.
And so, for example, the roasting process is one part of it. When the roasting happens, we're using reclaimed wood, and we're only using wood in that side of it. When it comes down to the distilling side, we're actually using natural gas.
Yeah,
which is something special.
I thought that was great. Yeah.
That helps to do a lot of clean cuts, being precise, and at the same time eliminates a lot of usage of wood. So that part is clean of why you taste what you taste, but also the little nuances of fermentation, the reclaimed wood vat, the environment being where it's at, all those things cultivate what you're having.
Yeah, no, I love it, and I could tell it was interesting to you, right? That's maybe the key thing is I can see it's like not only do you like it, but it's interesting to you.
Yeah, I mean, on the same, being real, is I felt the same way. I talked to people that are into Ray Camperos, Real Mineros, the heavy hitter ones, where like, well, it's a pretty bottle, how's the juice, right? So luckily it's both good, where it's the juice is great and the bottle looks nice, and
the proof's
and
good
and the message behind it is, what I would want as far as representation of who I am, but at the same time who I want to represent.
I love that. So does EDM reflect parts of you and who you are?
I have little bits and pieces. Like I like EDM. I love Mana. I love emo music. You know, I like it all. I'm not a big country guy, but that's also because I haven't listened to much of it.
You might want not to listen to it.
But honestly, like I won't say no to stuff, but I'm also like very particular. My wife says I'm a picky eater, but I try to be more mindful and be open to different things.
When's the last show, or rather, what is the last show you've been to?
I want to say I probably would be Shawn Mendes.
Oh, really?
Probably one of the best concerts I've been to was Taylor Swift, honestly.
The one in San Antonio?
No, the one up in I think it was at the Forum a couple of years ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so you're a Swiftie then?
No, but I could accept that she puts a good show.
That's good. I did not expect you to say that.
Hey man, I have little layers.
I layers are very, very important.
Yeah.
So I got a couple of questions left for you, and I'm trying to think of how to kind of position this for you. But so let's say you're sipping this Habali, this Last Explorer Habali, with anybody alive or deceased, anywhere in the world, doesn't matter where. Who would you like? Which musical artist would you like to sit down and have a mezcal with?
Fuck. It would probably be my grandparents.
Oh.
It would probably be my grandparents, and I'd probably listen to some classic like Spanish music, like Leodan, or I grew up with my brother playing piano, and
cool.
It would probably be Di Blasio. That's probably what I would listen to. And it would be my grandpa or my grandma.
Do you think were they fans of mezcal being in Puebla?
I don't think so. And honestly, I think I'm probably one of the first people in my family to be working with spirit or just in the industry itself.
Yeah.
But I'd be surprised to find out if anybody was into mezcal, just because. Like,
interesting.
I mean, I honestly didn't even get into the like drinking culture until like my early 20s or even 21. And even then, I drank particular things like Jack and Coke,
sure,
Jameson ginger ale, your classics. But for example, my brother always asked me to go to the parties with him, and I didn't want to go just because I wanted to play video games. So I was almost like a little nerd. But now in hindsight, I was like, I kind of wish I got to experience those things with my brother, but for a reason it didn't happen, right?
It works out how it does,
right? And so that's also another reason why I appreciate the culture itself. It's just my perspective is still my own, like anyone else's, but
still being shaped.
Yeah, still being shaped.
Knowing that Texas is such a big market, and this is my last question for you, what's kind of next for you? Is it to just keep growing it here in Austin? And this is not to presume you're not up in Dallas and stuff, but I just haven't seen like what is the next move?
As far as with the company itself, so luckily right now we're starting to do Dallas. Dallas is ginormous. Like, you got Frisco, you got Fort Worth, you got main Dallas, Arlington. It's massive. So right now getting Dallas situated and luckily growing it, and then from there going to Houston or San Antonio, depending on what it is. But honestly, with the company or the next role, I don't know. I mean, it's not because I don't have goals in mind. It's just I like not knowing what's gonna happen next, because I know it's gonna be something better. I didn't know I was gonna work in the supplier side, but here I am, right? So that's kind of what I enjoy about it. Seeing what comes out of it.
Never know what's behind curtain number 2.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that too.
Always on stage kind of thing, though.
That's right. Well, going back to that, that's true. I think there's a very clear title for what I'm going to call this podcast, all this talk of stages. Got guitars in the corner. We'll set you up behind the two pieces of Pioneer turntables and see,
absolutely.
See if you can make it happen.
But yeah, no, I mean, honestly, I like everything that happens organically. I think that's always been my perspective and like what I try to convey within whoever I'm with or whoever I'm trying to meet. You know, even if I know I want to meet him, I want it to be him or her. I want it to be very casual.
I love it. I guess because I want to ask you this, and I didn't realize I asked, but I saw one other podcast. Have you done a couple of them?
I did. I did 2. I did one with The Best Seats with Crawford. He's an amazing guy. He does a lot of great things for OC. And I did one with Talktails, which was with Shauna Race, who does Cocktails now.
Okay.
And forgot her name, but she does. She represents California's gins.
Oh, cool.
Which is
that's California.
Yeah. But yeah, I've done a couple, but I mean, they're all been very different.
I would suspect this is different for you.
Yeah.
I hope so.
Yeah, I know this has been very enlightening, where it's like I feel more vulnerable in a sense.
Oh.
Where I a lot of these things not in a bad thing.
No,
like,
it's
more
I think vulnerability is good.
Yeah. Like things that I don't really talk about, even if in conversation.
Yeah.
You know, like I was telling you, like I'm an open book, but at the same time, I don't talk about myself unless you're asking me a real question.
And so I knew that going in, right? But I also knew that unless I ask the thing that you haven't been asked, you'll never talk about it.
Yeah.
So I'm the same way.
Yeah.
It's like I don't really want to talk about my feelings of vulnerability, but I've been trying to do that more and more, you know.
Yeah. And I appreciate this has been great.
It was good, man. I'm glad we get to finally sit down and do it. So Luis, we're going to have one more mezcal, but thanks so much for chatting with me.
Absolutely.
Cheers, mate.
Salud.
Well, there we have it. Luis del Pozo of Last Explorer Mezcal and now Tequila. I am liking this post-sickness voice. I sound like an AM radio host, and I'm really, really digging into it. Had a great time getting to know Luis over the past few years. This interview was recorded some time ago, but he's still this guy, and he just has more responsibility because he's capable and he's had such great success with the Lost Explorer brand. You'll see him around, like I said, and he's always in the moment. You know, he may be in sales or doing supplier side things, but he's there to listen, and he's always sharing his experience about the world. And of course, as a new father, maybe less new now as his daughter is getting a little bit older. So thank you, Luis, for sitting down and chatting with me. And thank you, everybody, for listening to Show to V with Mike G. Before too long, you've been doing this thing for 10 years. I may say that a couple times. Or if you're thinking, I got this new Amazon Fire Stick and it streams so many different TV shows, where will I know to begin? Please keep dancing.